In this video, we're going to talk about pruning climbing roses. If you've never pruned climbing roses before, this task can seem pretty daunting. My intent with this video is to help you feel more confident in your abilities to tame your climbing roses, help initiate more growth in the springtime so that you can enjoy it all summer long. I'm Handyman Dan with UCanBuildThis. When you break it down into 4 easy steps, it's very manageable and can be done relatively quickly that help you systematically prune your roses consistently year after year. I already got started on one of my climbing roses, so I'm going to show you how to do the rest of them. You only need a few tools to do this to make sure you do it safely and without getting scratched to death. One are really good clippers. These are my babies. None of my kids get to use these. Kind of reminds me of like my mom's sewing scissors, how nobody could use those for anything but fabric. You also need a pair of really thick leather gloves. Long sleeves are advised. And if you're bald like me, a hat is really good to keep the thorns from falling on your head. One important thing to remember with pruning, you're probably going to get really scared and nervous about, are you cutting off too much of the plant so that you won't get any blossoms the next year? If you follow these steps, you will not be disappointed with how many blooms you get in the spring. Pruning really helps to rejuvenate the plant and get it to start sparking more and more growth. This is your chance to really train the rose to make it go in the direction you want it to.
Now, if you're worried about, am I pruning too much or am I not pruning enough? Make sure to check out towards the end of our video where we show the growth and development of our roses, starting from our pruning in the wintertime all the way up through October. You will be so amazed about how much your roses can grow when you prune them correctly. I found it best to prune my roses in the late fall and early winter.
First, you want to clear the area so you can work effectively. This means pruning out any rose canes that are sticking out towards me so that I can walk back and forth effectively without getting scratched to prune the rest of the roses. Second, you want to get rid of any dead canes, diseased canes that are scratched, or any of them that are rubbing up against one another, or the really thin ones that are thinner than like a pencil or a pen. The next step in pruning your roses is to determine how you want it to look. For me, I've got 3 different climbing roses, all 3 different colors, and I want them to spread out and fill up my trellis. I kind of want them to intermingle so you get some reds and pinks mixed in with each other. I've got a really tall trellis, so I want them to grow tall and long, whereas your situation might be a little different, and you have maybe a half-high fence like I've got over here, where I just want the rose canes to be as tall as my fence. So depending on your situation, it will determine how you want to prune your roses. The main thing is you want to make sure that you're working from the ground up. This will reduce your risk of pruning the wrong cane, which, sadly to say, I've done that before and it is devastating.
Next, you're going to move them around and tie them up loosely with string so they're oriented and laid out how you like them. The other really important thing to remember is the canes which are at a 45-degree angle or less are the ones which will produce your blossoms. If you keep them at an angle above 45 degrees, you'll only get rose blossoms at the end of your cane.
With step 3, it's important to note that there are 2 types of canes. You've got your main canes, which go from the base of your plant up, and on your main canes, you've got lateral canes. The lateral canes are the ones that produce the blooms. When you're pruning the lateral canes off of your main canes, you want to keep the lateral canes that are growing up. Any canes that are growing out or down, you want to just take those out completely. Here's a pro tip. For any lateral canes that are growing up that you're keeping, you want to count up 2 eye buds and cut right above that second eye bud. What this will do is it'll create a branch in your cane so that you get double the amount of blossoms in the spring. Sometimes your canes are going to be so big, by pulling them out, you're going to damage other canes. So it's best to just cut it long and then cut it into smaller, manageable chunks to throw away. Here's a little pro tip for you in regards to where you should prune and the direction in which you should prune. Here I've got a bud facing down and a bud facing up. If I want my cane to grow downwards, I would cut right in front of this bud at this angle. If I want my cane to grow up, I would cut right in front of this bud at this angle. And that is exactly the direction I want it to grow. So I'm going to cut it right here. So now my cane will grow up. Here I've got a stem. I want it to keep growing this way. So I'm going to cut it at a slant like that so that it continues to grow in that direction. I've already got a bud right there and I cut it this way so it'll keep growing up. I've got a bud here and here, right here underneath, and I want this to grow down. So I'm going to cut it right above that bud at an angle that way. On any of your canes that are remaining after you've done your pruning, you want to remove all of the excess foliage. This foliage won't help out, and it's also a breeding ground for aphids in the springtime. When I didn't remove the foliage, I quickly learned that that's where aphid eggs are laid in the fall, on the underside of the leaves. So by removing all of those leaves and the foliage, you actually are taking out the aphid eggs that were laid in the previous fall.
Now, if you do get aphids, which are still pretty common, make sure to check in our description for an awesome recipe to keep them away, which I got from my friend Travis.
Eventually, once your roses get older, you'll want to look for the old growth and cut those out to again help rejuvenate your plant to grow more and more canes. The new canes that come up will be more supple and you're able to train them better versus the old canes which have really tough wood, making it almost impossible for you to train them into a new direction. Here we've got an example of a scenario you might encounter. You can tell this cane is older. This is a newer cane. You can tell that it's got less of a barky look. So I'm going to take out this one. That way all the nutrients are going to go up to this cane and produce more blooms. This one is really big, so I'm just going to cut it into chunks because I don't want to harm my other canes with the thorns. Now you can see this will have a lot more room for it to breathe and grow better in the spring.
If you want to learn even more tips about how to take care of your roses, make sure to check out our rose playlist on our YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you have any questions about how to prune your roses, please let us know and we'd be happy to help you out. You can also get even more rose pruning tips and techniques in our You Can Build This community.
Seriously snowing, and it's May 5th.
Make sure and check in our description for a link to gain access to it. It is very interactive and is a great place to collaborate, where we post weekly videos and tips, as well as answer your building and gardening questions. We'll see you on the next one.